Hi everyone, good evening. So as I just said to you in the morning, we have not done task 4 and task 5 in our lesson in the morning. So I'm going to make a video to explain to you how to do task 4 and 5. So after you complete watching this video, I want all of you to attempt that PA1, all the 5 tasks, and send the answers to me by tomorrow so that we can have a feedback session on it on Friday. So this is the video on task 4 which deals with errors in suspense account. So first one we are looking at is closing inventory calculation. As you remember, when we are doing closing inventory, you follow the IAS 2 rule, which means that inventory is only valued at the lowest of the cost or the net realizable value. So currently the inventory is valued at 24,150, but included in this figure are some items costing 1,030 which will only be sold for 750. So remove the 1,030 and add the 750, because this stock which is worth 1,030 is now only be going to sold for 750. So cost is 1,030 but net realizable value is 750. So you want to record the lowest and remove the highest. So you remove the 10,030 and you add the 7,050, which will give you a closing inventory value 24,150 minus 1,030 plus 750, which will give you a closing inventory value of 23,870. Okay, I'm just checking that calculation again. 24,150 minus 1,030 plus 750, so 23,870. You need to record this adjustment into the trial balance on the next page. So you need to record the double entry for the closing inventory. Double entry for closing inventory is closing inventory SOFP is debited and closing inventory SPL will be credited. So that is what we write in the double entry. Closing inventory SOFP is debited and closing inventory SPL will be credited. So when we go into the next, we have both closing inventory SOFP and SPL. Closing inventory SOFP is debited 23,870 and closing inventory SPL will be credited 23,870. Sometimes you do not have both the columns, you will have only one closing inventory column. So in those circumstances, you both debit and credit the same column, one for SOFP and one for the SPL. Continuing to the B part of the question. The following further adjustments in the extract from the make the following further adjustments in the extract from the extended trial balance. A receipt for commission received of 550 has been made into the bank. The correct entry was made into the bank account, but no other entries were made. So you received commission received, the amount is 550. It was recorded in the bank but no other entries were made. So you received commission. So commission received is a income. So commission received account should be credited by 550. So let's see. So there is your commission received account because credited by 550. But this transaction was already recorded in the bank, so you cannot put it in the bank account again. So we have only mistake identified on one side, so the other side will be recorded into the suspense account 550. So commission received account is credited and suspense account is debited because the bank is already completed, so you cannot put it into the bank again. Next, entries need to be made for an irrecoverable debt of 210, ignore VAT. So we need to record a double entry for irrecoverable debt. So irrecoverable debt is an expense. So irrecoverable debt account will be debited and SLCA account will be credited. If you have VAT, VAT account also will be debited. But in this particular task, they asked you to ignore VAT, so we don't have to worry about that. The figures from the columns of the purchase day book for 31st March have been totaled as follows. So these are your purchase day book figures. Purchases is 16,250, VAT is 3,250 and PLCA is 19,500. When you are entering the transactions, you credited PLCA with the total, which is right. You debited VAT with the VAT, which is also right. The purchase account should be debited with the net value. And net value over here is 16,250. But instead of debiting with the net value, you have debited it with the total value. So you need to remove the difference from the purchases account. Okay, so see the difference between 16,350 and 19,500. Okay, 16,350 minus 19,000, sorry, minus 16,350, which will give you a balance of 3,150. So this is the balance which we need to correct. So in the purchases account, instead of putting a figure of 16,350, you put 19,400. So that means the purchases account was overcast. So when an account is overcast, you put it on the opposite side to remove it. So purchases account should be credited with 3,250. So purchases account should be credited with 3,250, which is the difference between 19,500 and 16,350. Once you complete that, this same 3,250 should also be debited into the suspense account. Sorry, this should be in suspense account here. This 550 was from the commission received. It should be in the suspense account. By mistake, I put it into the VAT account. So you had 550 for the commission received already, and now 3,250 from the purchases. So 550 plus 3,250 on the debit side, you now have 3,800. So I am putting this calculation here on the side and showing 3,800 here. So once you completed all your double entries, the suspense account, you have a credit of 3,800. Now you have a debit of 3,800, which means the suspense account has been recorded as 0. So in your task 4, when you finish all your adjustments, the debit and credit columns should be the same totals, and also the suspense account should be balancing with a 0 balance. That means the debit and the credit totals should be same. Continue ahead to the C part of the question. The ledgers are now ready to be closed off for the year end 31st March 2011. Show the journal entries to close off the payroll expenses account. So they want you to close the payroll expenses account. So payroll expenses is 76,422 on the debit side. Now payroll expenses is an expenses. So when you want to close the account, you transfer it to either SPL or SOFP. As you know, in SOFP you enter assets and liabilities, but payroll expenses is a debit into the SPL. So SPL will be debited with 76,422. I think that is the right amount. Let me just check the amount again. Yep. And to debit the payroll expense as SPL, you need to close off the payroll expenses. So payroll expenses is on the debit side. So to close it off, you put it on the credit side, 76,422. So like this, each and every expenses account will be closed and will be transferred to the SPL. And each and every expenses, income account, asset account, liabilities account also will be balance carried down, brought down and transferred to the SPL and the SOFP. They want you to choose a suitable narration. Transfer of payroll expenses for the year ended 31st of March 2011 to SPL. That looks like a correct one. Let's look at the others also. Transfer of payroll expenses from trial balance for the year ended 31st of March 2001. So you're not transferring to the trial balance, you're transferring to the financial statements. And this is not so that is not a correct statement. Transfer of payroll expenses for the year ended 31st March 2011 to the SOFP. You are not transferring to SOFP, you are transferring to SPL. Writing of payroll expenses, you are not writing off. So this is the correct answer, transferring the payroll expenses for the year ended 31st of March 2011 into the SPL. Question D. You are working on the year-end accounts of a well-known employer in your area. A friend who works there tells you that she has heard a rumor that the business is in financial difficulty. She asks you if the rumor is true and she is worried about her future. So she wants to know if it is true that your company is in financial difficulty. Okay. So say that you cannot talk to her and offer her a copy of the draft accounts. You cannot do that. It goes against confidentiality. Say that anything you tell her about the business must not be shared with anyone else. You cannot even share with her also, so that also is not right. Say that you have a duty of confidentiality to the clients, so she cannot disclose any information. Yes, that is a right answer over here. Say that you have a duty of professional competence and you are not well qualified enough to comment. That is not the right answer, because professional competence is about your knowledge. But here when you are sharing our information, it is about confidentiality. So that is the correct answer, which is C. Continuing ahead to task 5. In task 5, you have two questions. One is the reconciliation and the other one is the extended trial balance. So when it comes to reconciliation, you might be dealing with either SLCA reconciliation, PLCA reconciliation, or just the cash book when it comes to the bank reconciliation. So whenever you are doing these questions, you need to remember the formats of the SLCA, PLCA and the cash book. In the SLCA, on the debit side, you put sales and opening balance. And on the credit side, you put sales returns, irrecoverable debt, contra, money received from customers and discount allowed. In the PLCA, it's the other way around. You record the purchases and opening balance on the credit side, and purchase returns, discount received, contra and payments to suppliers will go on the debit side. So you still follow the same formats to do your reconciliation. We do control account reconciliation when the totals of the control account and the sales ledger or purchase ledger do not match. Before we start off the question, see what are you reconciling. Are you reconciling the control account or the list of balances? So use the following table to show 3 adjustments you need to make to the sales ledger control account. So you are correcting the control account. So any adjustment with the individual customer accounts, you can ignore them because those will be corrected in the sales ledger, not in the list of balances. So first one, the total column of the sales returns daybook have been overcast by 100. Sales returns in the SLCA usually goes on to the credit side, but this has been overcast, so you want to remove it. So you put it onto the debit side and the amount is 100. Adjustment 1, 100 on the debit side because sales returns is on the credit side, but you have overcast it. A credit sale of 250 to Highly Limited has been debited to sales ledger account of Highton Limited. This you don't need to correct because it is still there in your list of balances, and anyhow you are not correcting list of balances, you are correcting SLCA. A receipt of 352 has been credited to the sales ledger account of Anthony Mark instead of Mark Anthony. Again individual customers, so will be corrected in the list of balances. A bank's transfer received from a credit customer was 650, but the amount that should have been received is 560. Again talking about one customer. So again into the list of balances, will not go into the control account. A set of entry of 65 has been recorded in the sales ledger control account as 56. Set of entry means contra. Okay, so a contra of 65 has been recorded as 56. So 9 pounds is missing. So adjustment number 5, 9 pounds. And you entered 56, so undercasted, so you put it on the same side which is on the credit side. Contra goes on the credit side. It was 65 but you only entered 56, so you entered the remaining difference of 9 pounds. A settlement discount of 75 allowed to trade receivables has been entered in the wrong side of the sales ledger control account. So discount usually goes on the credit side, but you put it on the wrong side, that means you put it on the debit side. And anything you put it on the wrong side, you need to put twice the amount to correct the difference. So 75 times 75 will be, 75 plus 75 is 150. and discount goes on the credit side. So that's your task A. Which of the following statements about the suspense account is false? So they want you to select one false statement. It is used to record a difference in the trial balance, which is true. It should have a balance of 0 when all relevant adjustments have been made, that is also true. It is used to record an error of omission, that is not right, because error of omission means an entry which has been completely omitted. So if an entry is completely omitted, you use those accounts to make the entry, but you do not need to use a suspense. And it is often a result of errors in double entry. That is also right. So the only suitable answer for which the suspense account is false is that it is used to record error of omission. Because error of omission is an error which is completely omitted. Like let's say sales invoice is completely omitted. So to record the sales invoice, you use sales account and the SLCA account. You don't need to use a suspense account. So that is why the statement C will be wrong. Let's look into the task C, which is the preparation of your extended trial balance. In the SPL, you record expenses on the debit side and incomes on the credit side. In the SOFP, assets on the credit side and capital and liabilities on the credit side. Asset on the debit, capital and liabilities on the credit. Allowance for doubtful debts decreases the value of your assets, so we'll go on to the credit side. We have two credits, 1540 plus 170. So 1540 plus 170, 1710. Allowance for doubtful debts adjustment will go into the SPL. Which side it will go on the SPL will depend on which side it is in the adjustment. So in the adjustment it is on the debit side. So in the SPL also you put it on the debit side, which means it must be an increase in the allowance. Bank is on the credit side. Bank usually is an asset, but here it is on the credit side, which means it is an overdraft or a liability. So SOFP on the credit side, 2850 minus 200, 2650. Capital is also a liability. SOFP on the credit side, 35,000. Closing inventory goes both the places. SPL on the credit and SOFP on the debit. Depreciation charges expense, SPL on the debit. Irrecoverable debt also expense, SPL on the debit. Office equipment at cost. Don't go by this word at cost. They are telling that is just the cost of the asset. So office equipment is an asset. So put it on the debit side in the SOFP, 20,250. Accumulated depreciation will be a credit. Add the two figures, 6,350 plus 2,490, which is going to be 8,840. Office expenses is an expenses, SPL debit. We have one debit and one credit, so we need to subtract 18,320 minus 670, which is 17,650. 17,650. Opening inventory is also an expense, so SPL debit, 15,230. Purchases is also an expense, SPL debit. You have two debits, 58,930 plus 230, which is 59,160. Then purchase ledger control, PLCA, is your liability. We'll go into the SOFP on the credit side. Sales is a income, SPL on the credit, 103,450. Sales ledger control account, asset, SLCA, SOFP on the debit side. Selling expenses is an expenses, SPL on the debit. You have one debit and one credit, so see the difference, 25,030 minus 380 is 24,650. Suspense account, you got 620 and 430. If you add them, it is 1,050 on the credit side and 1050 on the debit side, so that will be 0, so do not enter it anywhere. After that, value added tax, which is your VAT, is on the credit side. That means you owe money to HMRC, so put it on the credit side, 1875. Once you enter everything, do the debit and credit totals of your SPL. Okay, so let's check that. Debit and credit totals of your SPL. I may have to reduce the size a little bit so that I can see the full question here. Okay. So first I am doing the debit total of my SPL. So it is 170 plus 2490 plus 175 plus 17,650 plus 15,230 plus 59,160 plus 24,650. So my debit total is 119,525. Let's see the credit total now. 119,525 is my debit total. Credit total 18,640 plus 103,450, which gives me a total of 122,090. So my credit total is 122,090. See the difference, 122,090 minus 119,525, which is 2,565. Credit side is higher, so put the balancing figure on the debit side, 2,565. And because credit side your income is higher than your expenses, this will be a profit. You can call it net profit. Now because you made once you put the profit, put the highest totals on both the sides, 122,090 and 122,090. Once you put the profit, transfer the profit into the SOFP. In the SPL it is on the debit side, so in the SOFP it will go on the credit side. Or one more way to say, when you make profit, you owe this money to the owner, so it's a liability. So because of that, it will be put on the credit side. If it was a loss, it will be on the credit side here and on the debit side in the SOFP. Let's check the totals now. I will have to decrease the question again, I think. Okay, first let's do the debit side. The total. So we have 18,640 plus 20,250 plus 20,720, which is 59,610. So I got 59,610. Let's see the credit side now. I got 1710 plus 2,650 plus 35,000 plus 8,840 plus 6,970. Oh, missed a figure, so let's do it again. 1710 plus 2,650 plus 35,000 plus 8,840 plus 6,970. And is there anything else? Plus 1875 your VAT plus 2565, which is your profit. So this is also totaling with 59,610. So when you are doing the totaling of the SOFP, don't do balancing. Once you calculate and transfer the profit, these two totals should match automatically. If they do not match, that means you know that there is a error. Okay, so sorry this video became a little bit lengthier than I thought, but try to watch it and try to complete your PA1 by Friday. Thank you everyone.